Talk about literary fiction and narrative nonfiction. While the fiction part of this category is not anything new, the narrative nonfiction is completely new to the entire reading fair. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what that is exactly. And I will give you some examples of projects, but I can't really show you any narrative nonfiction projects because there have not been any done ever. So actually there kind of have been. In the past few years, we've had some students that did nonfiction books and put it in fiction. They use the fiction elements, which is not really appropriate. So those projects were kind of disqualified, but now they've changed it a little bit to kind of make it fit, but we'll talk about that when we get there. This session is going to cover who can enter this category, what elements need to be included, some sample projects, and the judges' rubrics, so you can see exactly what the judges are going to be looking for. So, who can enter this category? Any student can enter this category in any grade. They can enter individually as part of a student group or as part of a family project, but they may only enter one project in the fair. So if they are part of a group, they cannot enter individually as well. A group is defined as 3 unrelated students working together. They don't have to be in the same class or grade. The project is entered in the category of the oldest student, and that's the same with family as well. Adults may not assist on a group project. Group and family used to be separated into 2 categories, and no one is quite sure why they were combined, because here comes family. They can include up to 3 related students. Related is defined as siblings or cousins. That's from the guidelines. Adult family members may assist, and this is my interpretation. I don't feel that they are counted or listed on the project because in the past we have never done that. So I've had people list and family, but as far as I know, up to 3 siblings could work together, and that would be, and the parents could still assist, as far as I know. Family and group projects are judged together in one category. So we have the students who work alone as a group of 3 students being judged against projects that family members can assist on. So until we get up to like the middle school age, I would kind of try to get students to not enter group if they're really just working as students by themselves, because when you have a group of students, 2nd, 3rd grade, working together versus a family group where parents can help and you have adult assistants, they really just can't compete. So, okay. Let's move on to elements. The elements are the different little parts that have to be included on the board. And if you've ever helped your child with a reading fair project before, the following items, these items that we're going to talk about must be included, but they have removed tone and mood and author's purpose as of 2016-2017 fair. So students no longer have to include the tone or mood or the author's purpose, although in some ages it has to be included as part of the summary, I believe, but we'll get to that slide in a minute. So the title, the author, and the publisher and publication date are the first 3, and typically I don't usually see the title listed like title, colon, and then that's the title. Usually the title is just displayed, and you'll see some examples in a few slides. But and then for your author, you can just say by, and then have the author's name. You do not have to include illustrator if there is one, but you can if you want to. And then your publisher and publication date, make sure that that element has both parts, both the publisher and the publication date. The publisher can usually be found on the title page at the bottom, and the publication date is usually on the opposite side of that page. You want to look for the little C with a circle around it. Okay, for plot summary, and I had a little trouble getting this slide to look the way I wanted. You don't have to include all three of these. You just have to include the one for your student's grade level. Or you don't have to include it, but your student has to include it. So for kindergarten through first grade, the summary should include a retelling through writing, drawing, dictating, and having the adult write what the student says about the story. So it's retelling the story. And that aligns to the reading literature standard in kindergarten and first grade, standard 2. So for second and third grade, they should recount the story in a written response, and this should include the message or lesson of the story. So that's a little bit more for them. And let me go back for just a second with the kindergarten, first grade. We were told, and this is something new, that they can actually draw pictures to depict the summary. I would just be really clear that that's labeled, that that's what it is, that that's the summary if they're doing drawings. And just note it says retelling. So the drawing would have to be, I would imagine, like, beginning, middle, end, something there that kind of retells the story. So I would be a little leery of doing just drawings, especially, each judge would have to interpret the drawing in their own way. Of course, you could have pictures that the student then dictates what that is, and the parent writes it down. That would be fine. And then students in fourth grade and above should summarize the story in a written response, and that should include the message or theme of the story. Probably the best resource for understanding what exactly they want there would be your child's ELA teacher. Whatever they have them do with that standard, the reading, it would, like if it's fourth grade, it would be the reading literature 4.2 standard. Personally, as a judge, just what we've been doing as summary would be fine. But I have had some people point out, other reading fair coordinators, that they should probably specifically include a sentence that says something like for second and third grade that specifically says the message or lesson, the message or lesson of this story is, or the lesson of this story is, that might want to have that included. And then for 4th through 12th, they could discuss the theme or message. So like I said below, choose only the one that applies to the student's grade level. Although these are literature standards, the Mississippi Department of Education told us that they should also be applied to the narrative nonfiction. So in nonfiction, you don't really have a plot because it's not made up. So it would really just be like a text summary. But narrative nonfiction, because it is more like a story, should kind of read, like beginning, middle, end. So hopefully you can find a plot summary in the book. I would say if you're reading a book with the child, or they're reading a book in with nonfiction, the narrative nonfiction, and they don't really see exactly how they're going to apply these things, they may want to choose something else. I would definitely find something that I could clearly express in these elements, because this is all the judges have to base the score on. So, and I'm not sure why I have for group or family under there. I don't think that was meant to be there. Okay, so main characters. In a nonfiction book, they're not really characters. They would be real people. And this is why you cannot use an informational textbook, because like if you're talking about, if it's shark facts or, seasons or something, there's not going to be any characters. It's just going to be talking about things. So that's why it has to be narrative nonfiction. So in narrative nonfiction, you'd have to have some kind of people involved in the action of whatever's going on. Yeah. And I said if the book portrays an event, but they don't really talk about people. For example, the thing that I was thinking of with this would be like the story of 9/11. They could go at it where there's not really, the book may not describe specific people to the point where you would consider them characters. Whereas if you look at, Diary of Anne Frank, obviously she is the character in that book. She's not really a character, she's a real person, but you see what I'm saying? If there aren't any characters listed, you still need to make this element and just explain that in a sentence or two. That this book, because this book was not narrative nonfiction or whatever, that it didn't really list specific characters. As long as something's there, they can't say that it's missing. But if you just don't include it because you don't feel like it had any, then you're going to have points deducted. So, and of course, when I say you, I'm talking about your student. It's just easier to say it that way. So the setting, you want to make sure to include the time and place of the story. And in some stories, like if you ever read a Clifford book, it does not say, or maybe if it's Halloween, Clifford's Halloween, you could say Halloween time. But sometimes in picture books, it's not clearly obvious when it's happening. Whereas with the I Survive series, the sinking of the Titanic, it's going to be a specific place on the Titanic and the date, when that happened. But with some picture books, it's not included, so something as simple as at school during the daytime, that works. I've never been real picky with setting, but there are some people who will consider this missing if you do not include both the date or the time and place, not necessarily a date, but if you do not include time and place, some people will do that. Moving along. The conflict is going to be what's the problem in the story. I can see where there could possibly be some issues with this with the narrative nonfiction, because a lot of times in a biography they're explaining several different things in the person's life that occurred. So my only suggestion there would be to focus on one that seems especially significant. If it's something like, such as the, September 11th, then that's obviously going to be the conflict itself. So, but, with your usual picture books and going back to just regular fiction, which is the main part of this category, whatever's going wrong with the character, that by the end of the story is resolved in some way is your conflict. Solution or resolution, how was the problem or conflict solved? And for high school only, there's an extra element included, which is author study, and I'm not going to go into that because I don't have high school students. If you need to see that, you can see the guidelines for more information. So a K through 8 project in this category should include 8 distinct elements. That would be your title, author, publisher, and publication date, your plot, main characters, conflict, solution, and I missed one. What did I miss? I have to go back and see. Setting. So make sure they have all 8. So here are some examples. This one is Chocolate Fever, the title of the book. This is fiction. And what I like about this one is how they made the chocolate bars. They made all of their elements look like, just as a judge, I love when I see stuff like this. But they made all of the little elements look like candy bars with the little silver sticking out. And of course, all of these containers would be empty or this project would have been disqualified. So, but overall, pretty good. See the student artwork on the back. So here's one for dog breath. This one is probably, I want to say this is probably family, just because the this book itself is kind of a low level, but the quality of the project looks like it had a lot of assistance. And again, This one, they didn't do the actual element titles, but where they wrote the information, they have it in the shape of the dog bones, which is really cute. The artwork is cute. I like that everything is on the board, and they also have the book displayed, which is not required. And in the module on Judges Tips, I will discuss my feelings about including the book, so you can see that one for more details about that. And I also wanted to include one that's just on a plain white backboard, because a lot of times the trouble that we see when people just have the plain white boards is that they don't dress them up enough to be eye-catching. But this is a good example of one that is, and it's very simple. You know, it looks like everything is there. I'm sure on most of these you're probably seeing the, I'm trying to find it, the author's purpose, and I think the tone is over there. So those would not be included this time. So, and this also shows the example of what I was saying with just having the title just listed and then the author written by or by. Those do not have to be labeled. The judges know. They include, if it's not labeled, we still see that it's there and we know what that is, and points are not deducted for that. So, so let's look at, I do want to go back really quickly because I did want to point something out. This board here and this one both started life out as yellow boards, and I tend to notice that boards that are, you know, with color, when I have all of my first place projects lined up, that's what the majority of them are, not yellow, but different colors. Like I said, with white, it's very hard to dress it up enough to be eye-catching. So, but I will have more tips about that in one of the other modules. I'm not sure. I think it's the judge one. Okay, so this is the judge's rubric. This is what's included. First of all, 10 points are deducted if any element is missing, and 10 points are deducted if student involvement is not evident in the display. And I will discuss that more in the judge video. The clarity of writing, there's 2 places where they score, and it's under captures attention and easily understood. So if there's a lot of errors, spelling errors, or handwriting really messy, you know, this could be where you have a problem with that. If the elements don't really stand out under captures attention, that's where you can have issues there. And also, because I don't think I mentioned this in the judge video, but if the plot summary is ridiculously long, you're going to probably lose points there. Because it should be a summary, not a retelling of, and I know one of them says retelling, but it does not mean word for word the entire story. Under the heading of creativity, has originality of subject or idea. That's where you could get points for using those elements that, you know, kind of relate to your story. Demonstrates imagination and manner of production or presentation. You know, don't copy something you've already seen. We want to see new stuff. Has clever, inventive, or effective use of materials to express ideas. And have some examples of that in my judge video as well. Quality of the project, they follow directions, demonstrate skill, craftsmanship, and durability. Thoroughness of written information, proper emphasis is placed on important items, completely portray the concept of the book. Interest evoked, represents real study and effort. Exhibit is appropriate to age level. If they're a first grader and they're entered individually and it looks like the parent did everything, you know, or if the book is, like, let's say I have, like, you know, an 8th grader and they're doing Pete the Cat, except in special circumstances. I mean, if we know the kind of backstory with the student that they are really reading on a lower level, that's different. But if they're reading, you know, their typical age level, then they should have an age-appropriate book. Encourages the viewer to read the book. So if I see your project from across the room, like, what is that? And I want to go walk over to it, that's going to be scored highly. And the project is visually appealing. So, you know, make sure you have colors that look good together, and there's no issue with helping your student make good choices with what they're putting and where and stuff, as long as they're the ones completing the project, unless it's family. So that's just the basics of the fiction and narrative nonfiction. Of course, you do need to see the full rules for complete information, but this should get you on a good start.